Welcome back to another YouTube episode. Today I have a very special guest. I invited Kenny Vo to our session today. Kenny is a visual development artist. He currently works at Netflix Animation, if I'm not wrong.
Paramount Animation at the moment.
Paramount Animation. But he also worked for a lot of other studios like Warner Brother Animation, Sony, Blizzard, Riot Games, and a whole bunch of other studios. And I'm super excited to have him here because we can shoot a lot of questions at him about visual development, how we got there. And he also will give us a demo, which I'm super excited about. Before we start with all that, can you just give us a quick intro?
Yeah, for sure. Hi. So, like you said, my name is Kenny Vo. I am a visual development artist in animation. Currently, I am working at Paramount Animation on Transformers. Before that, I was working at Netflix as a visual development artist. Before that, I was working at Sony Music, head of their kind of world building for a project they're working on. And then from there, I was lead environment artist at MZ, and then lead concept artist at SKILLSHARE Studios. I've been working in entertainment for about 6 years now. And yeah, I got a lot of my schooling from Brainstorm. Mostly and just kind of learned on the internet and everywhere else. So yeah, I'll just be drawing, and anything you have to ask, just fire away, and then we'll just kind of get to it.
All right, cool. Sounds good. Can you tell us a little bit about how you became a VizDev artist? And there are definitely differences about illustration and concept art, right? So could you maybe give us a little brief on what you would say is the biggest difference?
Yeah. To be completely honest, like I think for me, I started in concept art, or what you would traditionally call concept art, right? We did mostly like games and film and stuff like that. And then moving into VizDev, as a student, I always thought there was like a big difference. I always thought there was like it's like, two completely different worlds, right? But actually, in the last couple of years, I'm realizing it's exactly the same. We design with a purpose in mind, right? There's storytelling, there's orthos, there's turnarounds, there's everything. So generally speaking, what I've come to learn is that visual development and concept art are basically the same words the two different words to describe the same job, right? Obviously, if you're working in games, there's a focus on level design. There's a focus on different aspects of the level, like in terms of like, oh, what's behind that corner, or what's what the overall kind of space looks and feels like. And then for films and animation specifically, it's kind of like, what does it look like within that lens or that frame? Because in games, we don't control the camera, but in film and animation, you do. So you don't have to design as much. If the camera never makes it to that back corner, you'll never have to design that back corner. Versus games, you have those people that kind of they go in every nook and cranny, and if there's a texture out of line, they'll find it. So
it's basically double problem solving. Especially the biggest difference in there is more like the theme of, or the necessary of the problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's really like the types of problems we run into, right? Rather than anything of material difference, right? We're still concepting, we're still problem solving visually. There's really no difference in terms of those things. It's just, one side calls it one thing versus another, but it's based in overall. Obviously there's differences in the nuances, but overall it's pretty similar.
You said you worked at SKILLSHARE Studios with James Paick, or I don't know how for James Paick, how you can call it. But how was the general experience for you, and how did you get in there? How was that?
Mostly luck, I would say, is how I got in there.
Okay.
I started at Brainstorm School, and as we know, James Paick and John Park, they co-run Brainstorm, and I took a World Building 3 class, and that was James's advanced environment design class. And I don't know what it was. I definitely wasn't the best student in class. When you think about the people in my class, there was definitely better options, So I don't exactly know why he picked me, but during that class, I guess he saw something, and he decided to pick me up. So I often attribute it to mostly luck. I had the right skills for the right project at the time, right? In terms of how was it? Oh, go ahead.
Mm? Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of how was it, dude, it was one of the best experiences I've ever had in life. James is, we know James as, one of the best teachers in the industry. He's
Mm.
known to have a extremely good turnaround when it comes to, the students that come and learn from him. So the cool thing about James, I would say, is that he's the same regardless of what context you see him in, like whether it is about you know you're taking a class with him, or
Mm.
you're working for him. He's an educator at heart.
Mm.
So my experience at Scribblepad, fortunately, he kind of took us under his wing and really trained us and slowed down and showed us the ropes, and even picked us up when we weren't, what I would consider like not ready,
Mm.
and kind of helped
So
guide us through and
did
stuff
did
like
you
that.
did you had a feeling of you really have to bust your ass right now when you got into the studio, or was it like you felt ready when you got? Was it your first studio job at Scribblepads, or did studio jobs before?
Oh, that was my first job.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, it was like it was the deep end for sure. I really like, because his studio specifically, when they hire you, they're kind of expecting, like when when clients kind of ask for, hey, can we get in this get a project with you or whatever.
Mm.
Generally speaking, they're expecting a certain quality, because he's James Paick. So when working at a studio, you have to perform at a certain level. So there
Yeah.
was definitely a kind of skill gap that I needed to kind of work through, and luckily I had some good leads when I was there, and some people to really guide me and help me out through all that. So
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for
yeah.
sharing that with us. So I have a first community question for you. As mentioned, I always ask the art zone community before about questions for the mysterious person I invite. This first question is a very good starter. So, which warm-up exercise do you use, and which fundamentals are important for a visual development artist?
Yeah, as of I would say as of lately, I haven't been doing too many warm-ups. I kind of use the painting and the initial thumbnail. Like, when we get to work, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Can we get, 10 ideas, or kind of start figuring out the variations of whatever assignment that we have, right? So
Mm.
generally speaking, I kind of use that as my warm-up. The first couple are
Mm.
kind of throwaway sketches.
Mm. Yeah.
But sometimes there's a good gem in there. So like I generally don't do too many warm-up. In terms of, for a visual development artist, like what basic skills that you kind of really want to make sure that you have. It really comes down to, what's your focus. I think visual development is such a broad topic. There's the term visual development artist, but within that term, there's focuses. There's people that are more geared towards environments, more geared towards characters, more geared towards props, or even like color keys versus matte paintings. So for me specifically, I can only answer according to my position, and I'm more focused on environments and color keys. The biggest skills that you really want to have. This is after, like, the general things that you want to have is like perspective, color theory. Those basic things, we kind of already know, right? You really want to be able to understand what cinematography is, right? Really understanding camera lensing. You wouldn't really think of that too much, especially as a student, because as artists, we tend to kind of stay in that artist zone, right? There's always like, oh, we have to learn how to paint, draw, design, right? But when you get into a visual development role, now you're interacting with different people, right? And oftentimes, if you're a visual development artist, there's a director that is, directing the production that you're on, and the way they talk is different than how we talk. They talk about
Mm.
things in terms of lensing. They talk about things in terms of story moments, camera movements, and stuff like that. And it can be very difficult to understand what they mean if you don't know that language. One of my first assignments at Netflix, I had this 1 point perspective shot,
Mhm.
and the director looked at the painting and she goes, "Oh, that's really cool. Can we put that on a 20 millimeter lens?" You're like, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing to do with design, color, nothing. But, you know, basically, if you know anything about lensing and stuff like that, it's like a wider angle lens versus a more telephoto. I had a flatter, more telephoto look to it. And basically she wanted a wider angle lens. If you don't know how to control those aspects using perspective, it can be very difficult to accommodate for those things. So I think the basic drawing, color theory, and things like that, those are very easy things to say. And those are often the you know, absolutely, we need to know them. But then there's other skills, and knowing who we're interacting with is a really big important step, I would say.
The next one is, how does your typical work day or work week look like? And could you describe a typical day in terms of like, how many hours do you work? Do you take a lunch break? Do you do drawings in your break? Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my typical day, right? Work starts at 9. So, you know, work from home, it's like, you know, you get up at like 8:55. And then so, you know, it's been nice in that aspect. But, you know, so we start at 9. Oftentimes, if I haven't been launched on a project yet, there is some sort of meeting to talk about what production needs, like what are the next steps that we're kind of like we're figuring out, right? So once I get my assignment, the way I tend to want to do things is I need to get all of my good ideas out by lunch. You know how like you eat lunch and then it's like you're kind of like knocked out. You're just tired, drained. So what I like to do is have all my thumbnails done by lunch. So that's 12 o'clock. That way, by the second half of the day, I'm kind of like mentally tired, but no matter how tired you are, you can still render. You can still, you know, do all those easier tasks. And that's, I kind of like to leave those for after lunch. That way, even if I'm like kind of groggy, not feeling good that day, it kind of sets me up to still be able to produce work rather than, you know, those days where, you know, you're tired, but you still don't have a concept ready to show. And by, you know, tomorrow morning's review, you're like panicking because, you know, you can't think of anything, you're racking your brain, you know? So that's the kind of system I developed for myself.
How many thumbnails would that be?
Generally speaking, I don't do too many. Like, you know, I think as like students, we always think like, oh yeah, they do like, you know, 50 or 100 thumbnails, right? Because, you know, in class we did that. I float between like 3 to 6, you know, and they tend to be pretty different.
And are we talking about environment shots or talking about design thumbnails? Or is it really like depends on whatever task you do?
It depends what task I do, right? But, you know, with that in mind, right, I am a more environment heavy kind of viz dev artist. So generally speaking, it tends to be either color keys or some sort of set design. So I'm figuring out like a location of sorts.
How is it working for you if you couldn't get enough sleep the night before?
Oh, it's a nightmare, dude. You know, if I don't get enough sleep, you know, that night, my day is shot. Like it's just like if I'm like, because I'm very strict about my timing. I used to, as a student, you know, you kind of like, oh, I'll just work through it, you know, like, you know, I'll pull all-nighters and then I'll do whatever I need to do, you know. But at work, you can't really do that. I can't. Some people do. I just don't work that way, you know. So what I do is I'm very strict about when I go to sleep / when I wake up. I usually sleep around like 11 or 12, and then I wake up around 8, right? And if I can do that, I can stay on task pretty well throughout the entire day. But if I don't, those days they tend to be pretty slow. But luckily, you know, I just suck down a coffee, and then it's like I was saying a second ago, where I kind of make sure that I have my thumbnails and ideas kind of ready before lunch. If not, I'll hold off on lunch until I get there, you know. One time I had a flight, and I was coming back from a trip, and then I had a class that same night. And then I was like, I'm fine, you know, it's just a flight, it's not a big deal. And then I was doing a demo, and like my head tipped and my headphones just like slammed into the computer, and because it just like slid off, and I was like, oh shit, I'm not ever doing that again. But it was a learning experience for sure.
It's a learning. By the way, let's quickly take a look at the demo. You are starting with an establishing shot of.
Yeah, I was thinking about some sort of like castle / kind of like you know, this fortress type thing. What I'm doing here is basically I kind of set up a shot to where it's an establishing shot of this building,
Mm.
And then if you were, I don't know how closely you were watching the demo, but so what I'm doing is I'm like taking this castle piece and just duplicating it over and over
Mm.
again. And
Mm.
what it's doing is it's simulating a lot of detail, right? It's giving me a level of detail that's really hard to accomplish quickly, like by just kind of painting. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah, I like also how you made it with the shapes of the clouds, the graphical look, basically just using same type of shapes and then duplicating them.
Yeah, the cool part. What I like about this type of like work is that there's a couple things that happen. There is a sense of scale that's established.
Mm.
It feels like like, because as you're shrinking things get smaller, and there's this level of detail that you hit with your scale that
Mm.
feels, I would say, like appropriate, you know.
Mm.
But it's kind of like low effort in the sense that it's not really me drawing and painting every little thing, but it's
Mm.
simulating that effect, which is
Yeah,
you know, it kind
yeah,
of, it
makes
helps out a
sense.
lot.
Yeah, I would also connect that with another question when it comes to design problems, because you said sometimes everyone has the trouble of not finding the right idea, and then you run into like time issues, etc. So how do you tackle those problems? So let's say you have to deliver a design and they want something unique. Do you have any special resources, or do you have any like plan B for yourself to find a solution to that?
Yeah. So okay. So generally speaking, right? Like, yeah, we're tasked with like, oh, you have to make sure you come up with an idea. You have to make sure that the ideas that you do look good, right?
Hmm.
So oftentimes when I'm kind of working and I'm running out of ideas, usually I'm not referencing enough. There's not enough like reference in my thing. There's things kind of feel generic because there's not enough ingredients in the pot. You know what I mean? If you put
Hmm.
salt and water into a pot, you don't have a soup. It's not quite there yet, but if you kind of add a couple more ingredients.
Mm,
And I try to identify that as soon as I can, because if things are feeling generic, you want to know immediately. You want to know as soon as you can. That way you can start finding and slow down and try to find other references. The biggest thing I would say when trying to do that is slow down, right? Oftentimes I find myself, I guess, rushing, right? Where you're kind of, when you get kind of panicky, when you're like designing
mm,
and you're nervous that you won't get something out in time.
mm,
Oftentimes that leads to you're kind of like blind. You have these blinders on, that it stops you from getting the best idea because you're trying you're grabbing at whatever idea kind of comes. But if you slow down and really try to just observe what's happening in your painting, and break down and rely on your fundamentals, right? Look
mm,
at it and be like, okay, what's wrong? Is perspective wrong? Is the lighting wrong? Is the color wrong? Is there a story being told here? And then you can start identifying the problems really quickly.
if there would be one thing you have to choose of the whole process, what would it be and why?
I really like the storytelling aspect of concept art. Like, for example, in my careers, as of thus far, I've been fortunate enough to be in positions to where I'm oftentimes creating like pitch work, right?
Mm,
What the just because of the nature of what Scribble and what James was having us do, right? I was oftentimes in a position where I was creating key framework, more story driven things rather than kind of like vast environments. Um, and I really enjoy doing that because there's these moments where the audience, like the director, the client, James himself, or even other artists, stuff like that, and they see the work and they kind of feel what's happening, you know?
mm,
And it's not because of anything in particular, but it's all the pieces kind of lining up. It's like when something feels fast, right? How do you make
mm,
that feeling on a still image? Or when something feels scary, how do you tap into those emotions? How do you tap into somebody's idea of fear, And I think
mm,
that's when things get really fun because, I'm pulling from my experiences. I'm pulling from my life where, you can't just be like, oh, that's scary, right? It's like, because every something is scary or scary is different for everybody, you know, and you really
Yeah.
want to understand at a core level what those things are. That way, when you're creating
Mm.
art, you can kind of push that into your work and have the audience feel what you want them to feel. You know, you're creating an emotion basically out of nothing, you know, for me. And
Mm.
it's amazing for me. I just I love that part.
Just to evoke the feeling. Yeah, I totally understand that. So is there anything you don't like about the process? Is there anything, if you would cut out?
In terms of the process itself, I don't know. So okay, I'll answer this in a different way. In terms of like concept art itself, no.
Hmm.
You know, even doing orthos, even doing the slower things, you know, the things that you generally speaking, people tend to not want to do. Not that there aren't people that want to do it, but you know, there's that tendency to not want to do those things, right?
Mm.
I still like doing those because for one, it gives us a break. It lets us kind of like, you know, do like kind of relax for a second. You can't always be doing the hard pieces or whatever it is. Um,
Mm.
so what I don't like doing is really interacting with people that don't respect the art process. You know, I've had
I like the answer. So you basically don't like people.
yeah, it's like because it's at the end of the day, you know, it's a business, right? Any
Mm.
studio that you work at, whether it's movies, games, animation, it's a business. So
Mm.
there's always people that are kind of money first, and there's decisions that are made that you know, are kind of like, why'd you do that, right? And it's like, oh, it's because, you know, investors or whatever it is. And I totally get that. I understand why we do it, but the decisions are oftentimes not the best ones because it just doesn't respect the vision that we have for the product. You know,
Mm.
as an artist, you want to create like the best product you can, but then oftentimes those decisions kind of, I don't know, they kind of get in the way.
Yeah,
And
it's a bit contrary because you get hired for that, right? And then they basically put roadblocks in front of you to not get the best product out there.
exactly, you know, and we had this one thing where I'm not going to name any studios or anything, but we were at a studio and we were designing a character, and then they kind of put out this survey where they're like, "Oh, hey, do you guys think this character looks cool?" And then turns out people didn't think it was as cool as we thought, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't really know who the character was or anything. So
Mm.
they're like, "Cool, we'll just change the whole character." And I'm like, "Dude, really? Like, you're just gonna let us?
What?
You're gonna let a survey decide, you know, what we design?" Like, I get what you're saying. I just don't agree with it.
It's a really weird approach.
Yeah, I mean, you
Okay.
know,
I guess the producer was new on the project, maybe.
I'm not a CEO. I don't run that kind of business. So it's like, you know,
Mm.
yeah, there's obviously things that can and can't be done, but you know, as an artist, I want to put like I want to show you what's cool, you know. Like,
Yeah.
trust me, we got this, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you're hired for. I have now a special round of quick questions you need to answer really fast.
Cool.
Are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
Digital or traditional art?
Digital.
Summer or winter?
Winter.
Beer or wine?
Wine.
Meat or veggies?
Veggies.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars. Easy.
Sweet or salty?
Salty.
Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter?
Harry Potter.
Okay. Rap or house music?
Rap.
Money with no freedom or freedom with no money?
Freedom with no money. 100%. Easiest question.
Name 3 titles you wish you could have worked on.
Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy, and Mega Man.
What 3 words would you tell the teenage Kenny?
Do what you want. That's 4.
Okay, it's fine. I take it. What's your favorite anime?
Right now is hiking.
And what's your favorite drink?
Milk tea.
Thanks. That was the quick round. What advice would you give people on approaching these days to get into studios? Would you also recommend maybe focusing on social media presence? Would you focusing on going to live events, talking to producers in studios? Is there anything you would say that it maybe also had changed in the process of getting into a studio these days?
So generally speaking, the people that we're talking to in that aspect, right? It's like, how do you get a job, right? Those people tend to be students. I would say the best thing that you can do is perform well in your class. If, as you were just saying a second ago, a lot of those things like, oh yeah, gear your portfolio towards, a certain studio, this and that. Those are the general answers that since they've already been said, I want to kind of say something else. And I would say it is do well in your class. The reason I say that is because your class is, especially as an educator myself, the class is really where we find a lot of potential hires. And because if you think about it, for example, you're working at a studio, I'm working at a studio, right? Whenever we are hiring, my friends are already working. I can't hire them, there's always that like, oh, you have your friend connection. So they're like, oh, they would never hire me as a student because he probably knows a million people, right? That's the idea. But those million people that we know, generally speaking, they're already working, right? They took class with us. They have as much experience as we do. So it's a lot harder to hire them. But who is hireable, right? Those are the students in the class. And the way you kind of like when you do well in your class, it reflects well on you, right? Because if you're somebody that misses homework, if you're somebody that doesn't do all the assignments and makes excuses, what makes me think it's going to be any different when it comes to like actual studio work? You know what I mean? But that one student, those couple that they go above and beyond every single assignment, they kill it. They do everything you say and some at that. You know what I mean? Those are the students that get hired because the teachers, oftentimes, they're not just entry-level professionals. They're professionals with experience, with hiring power. Oftentimes, because to get hired as an educator, oftentimes there's a level of experience there that schools are looking for, right? But you have to remember the people that are in your class, they also are looking for jobs. And then when they find a job, a studio is going to be like, oh, dude, do you know anybody that can do some line work as well? Because if they're hiring one person, chances are they're hiring others. And they hire you, they're like, oh yeah, that guy in my class, that girl in my class, like killed it. They'd be really good at this stuff. And then, you get called, right? And it's this chain reaction. And what happens is, for example, at Brainstorm, there's 20 people per class. So 19 other people to hire you, 19 other potential studios to hire you. But if you're kind of like not really trying in class, if you're not really participating, you're not really fun to be around, it's not personal. It's just, that's the kind of vibe that you set up. You know what I mean?
What would you say for today if you would have to restart again on learning drawing, learning painting, to understanding basic fundamentals of art? How would you set up a proper plan for yourself? What to do if you not want to go to something like Art Center or a huge payment decision of a school? What would be your approach?
Really, the way I would kind of go about things is first and foremost, figure out where it is you want to go, right? What is the studio, wherever it is, what projects do you want to work on? Because oftentimes, right, when we are students, there's some sort of deadline, right? Whether it's financial, whether it's, pressures from parents, whatever it is, you can't just stay a student forever, right? So you want to kind of do it as fast as you can, but take your time kind of thing, right? What I would recommend is really figure out, okay, where is it that I want to go? That way, whenever you start picking classes, you can start gearing yourself towards, that place. Because if you are going to be an environment designer, if you are going to be doing more landscape type things, maybe keep that focus a little more towards, landscapes, environments, and stuff like that. But if you are going to be more character, maybe focus a little more towards anatomy, and you can kind of get that leg up because there's a million things that you need to learn to be a fully rounded artist. But you don't have to be a fully rounded artist to actually get your first job. You just have to be good enough at one or two couple things that they can actually hire you for, but if you're kind of like mediocre in everything, it's cool that you know everything, but you're not really quite at that level that they need,
What is often the case is that people have trouble on learning things like design. So a lot of people can paint, they can use a 3D program these days, they can render stuff out. They have not a big sense of design because, of course, it's not that easy to design something well. Do you have any recommendations, any resources, any approaches also on learning design shape when it comes to shape design or functionality or the broader field of design?
That's tough. Like in terms of like books and stuff, I don't know too many, right? I think I feel like we have a huge abundance of, I would say, technical books where it's like, how to draw, how to paint, how to, very technical things. When it comes to design, I feel like the best way to kind of learn that is, for one, by doing, right? That's the biggest thing I would say. Just try it. Just do A plus B, right? Find two references, put it together, see what you make. And then, taking classes is a big one as well. But watching like movies and understanding not just like, oh, that looks cool, right? Asking yourself, why does that look cool? Why is it interesting? Why is Darth Vader scary? Right? Because he's scary. Like when, for example, in Rogue One, I don't know have you seen Rogue One, where he shows up in that hallway and he just starts chopping people up? Why is that scary? It is scary. We know it is, but why is it scary? And that's the thing that you really want to understand, because it comes back to that type of thinking, that type of play when it comes to creating your images and designing what's going to invoke scariness.
Funny that you mentioned that one, because I always have to think about, when it comes to scary designs, that Ian McKay said that he once designed Darth Maul for episode 1 on production, and in his book there is this version he made, and the director found it so scary that he actually changed it.
I remember that talk. I remember hearing that. I can't put a visual to it.
But it's definitely a great example you made, because it's really about perception, understanding. And it's also back to that feeling thing about evoking a emotion to the observer, to what do you actually show.
And, to be able to create that effect, to be able to design that moment, right, with that in mind, for everyone to universally feel that is a terrifying situation to be in. That's when that concept art really hits, because there's a moment where, or there's a time in production where they had to figure it out and be like, okay, so how are we going to set this up? And that's what that's where you kind of want to be. You want to be able to tell that story rather than like perspective lines. I'm just rendering form, because it's not really about that. It's the drawing, the painting, the color. That's all words. Now, what are you saying with those words?
Yes, I totally agree on that. Is there maybe things you would like to do also just for your personal development still? I mean, you already said that you have quite experience. You work really on a lot of stuff. Is there any direction, any topics, any genres you would love to work on in the future?
Fortunately, in my career thus far, I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of different projects, from film, animation, even theme park, right? After a while, I think the novelty of projects tends to kind of wear off after a while. You know what I mean? Like, it's cool, but it's still work at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So for me, my goal at this point in time is really like, who do I want to work with, right? Who's someone cool that I want to learn under? Who's art styles interesting that I want to kind of develop with, and friends, you know what I mean? Because that's really what it is. Because when you're working at a studio, you're working 8-hour days, 40-hour weeks, right? You're seeing these people more than your spouse, you know what I mean? And it's you want to be around people that are fun, that kind of push the boundaries of skill, right? You want to be around people that make you feel like you want to get better, versus oftentimes you can kind of feel like maybe people aren't like developing, or people are kind of like stagnant, and you kind of want to find people that really keep pushing the bar.
I want to say that's also a community question, but I think it's a really valuable one. Are there any bad experience you had work related in your career? Are there any things you would say situations you would love to avoid, and you are open to share? I mean, if not, it's good.
Luckily, in my career, I haven't had too many bad experiences, right? Not to where like, like, oh, I never work that person again, or I'm trying to like, we're not nowhere near like a fist fight or anything. You know what I mean? There's been times where I've had bad clients. For example, I had a client where we were kind of going back and forth on notes, right? We were just, I would do the assignment, hand it off, and they would approve it, and then like maybe like 2 days later, they'd come back and like unapprove it. And then the first couple times I'm like, sure, I'll do it. It's not that big a deal. But after like the fourth time, I was like, okay, we can't keep doing this because I'm not getting paid any more for this. You know what I mean? And you have to kind of you have to do this awkward thing of like, hey man, we can't keep doing this, blah blah blah. And it's definitely not a fun experience, I will say. But the thing I would say, if that happens to you, right, really cover your bases. Really make sure that you understand that you're in at the very least, you're not like in the wrong. You want to make sure that you have the paperwork, you understand kind of the parameters and stuff like that. That way, hopefully not, but you have some sort of like paper trail that you can reference, right? That'd be the first thing. After that, I would say use that as a learning experience. It happens. It's gonna happen to everybody, unfortunately, but just learn from it. Take that as an opportunity to be like, okay, I'm not doing that again. And you just develop as an artist. And that's how, when you hear those veterans, they're like, oh, don't ever do that, or yeah, I tried that once, it didn't work. It's those experiences, and it sucks when you're going through it, but it's actually kind of a fun story once you kind of get past it and give it like a year.
By the way, the castle looks really nice. Watching the whole time, and it's really coming together.
Yeah,
I love the mood. I love the morning mood.
Yeah, you told me it was morning for you, so I was like, might as well hook it up, right?
That's the YouTube hustle. 6 a.m. getting up before studio work to record with people you like.
It's funny, like it's looking like, when you zoom out, it's looking fine, but if you notice, that whole castle hasn't been designed. The legwork is really happening in the silhouettes, and something that I really focus on as I'm designing, as I'm creating work, is really making sure those silhouette reads come through really well. Because if your silhouettes aren't clean, or there's a very difficult read kind of happening, you can really be fighting the painting. But if you can make the silhouettes work, oftentimes there's enough detail there to kind of already work. You know what I mean? It's really amazing what you can do with just a silhouette, and then just a little bit of indication of like texture and stuff.
And probably also like your experience in working in movies helps with that, because in movies we see stuff only for 2-3 seconds, right? So sometimes the things need to read immediately. So we need to see a castle is a castle, person is a person, a thread is a thread. So I guess that's also really plays in hand of working with silhouettes and trying to make the image read. But that's also maybe, I think, the reason why the castle is already reading from zooming out that far, because the silhouette is so strong.
Yeah, it's like a strong silhouette, and that's how I like to work. It's really making sure that these silhouettes are strong and they carry the image, and then everything after that, it's kind of like, it's just dressing. It's really whatever.
We went through a lot of questions already, and we almost hit the 1 hour mark. Is there maybe anything you want to share with us, also with the community, the ArtSTATION community? Is there anything you want to share? Anything you want to say? Anything?
Education talk, or something going on in my life? Which one did you mean?
Whatever is on your soul, man.
I guess a big thing, and I'm sure your community is great, and I'm sure you're doing this. What I would say, a big thing that I'd really want students to understand: be somebody that is kind of there, present, and helpful. I think there's oftentimes, especially in this day and age, where we're kind of like we're on the internet, and you don't like when you take a class, you don't even have to turn on your camera. My class, you do. I force them to, but you don't have to, right? And there's this tendency to be like, oh, it's just a class, it's just whatever. What I would say is, just be active, be somebody that is helpful, be somebody that is that you would have appreciated whenever you were at that level. Because I think for me, luckily in my life, I've had professionals, mentors, friends that literally like dragged me along in terms of like my career, right? Like I wouldn't be anywhere near where I'm at now if it wasn't for my friends and my circle of influence. And that happens because someone just reaches out and decides like, hey, I want to help this person. It literally just starts from just saying, oh, hey man, like how's that painting going? Or if you like have a forum or something, or a Discord, right, and you post your own kind of work, and then someone just gives you a paint over. It's like little things like that it creates, for one, a lifelong friend, because they're willing to take time out of their day to help you. That's amazing, right? But also it kind of sets up this tone for everybody else to be like, oh wow, yeah, this is really cool. And it kind of fosters this growth, and it's this cycle that happens where as you get a job, you hook someone else up, and they get a job and they hook someone else up, and it just continues. It's that chain of help. But you kind of really want to make sure that we hold on to that kind of culture.
I would want to say also to all the viewers out there, if you have any questions, please make sure to write it in the comments below. Also, if you appreciate the time and effort we have spent in making this episode, please give it a thumbs up. And if you find this informative, please share it with your friends. The demo is going really, really well. I really enjoy watching that. And the cool thing is also it makes me exciting about starting work now. For you, it's more about getting in bed, I guess.
Yeah, it's coming up. I was a little nervous, man. You're like, oh yeah, you have about an hour demo. I was like,
no pressure.
And I was like, that's a little fast, but no, it's working out.
I mean, you can still continue if you want. I just want to say thank you everyone also to participate into the questions, and also make sure if you are interested in joining the ARTSTATION community, there's a Discord button right on the YouTube banner. And also if you're interested in the one-on-one mentorship sections, please make sure to check out janosch-art.zone. If you have any questions to Kenny, check out definitely his Twitch. And where can people also find you? Instagram?
Yeah, so Instagram, ArtStation, Twitter, all Kenny Vo Art.
Thank you so much for joining, Kenny. Thank you for spending your time with us. We wish you a lot of luck to pursue your career and having, of course, a lot of fun in drawing and painting.